So I'd like to welcome you to this video, The Truth About Bodybuilding, a Scientific Approach. And this video is allied to the book of the same name. So in this video we're going to start off with a brief look at muscle structure and function. We're going to cover energy systems and muscle fibre types. We're going to look at how a muscle grows and repairs. And then we're also going to look at the training protocol. We're going to go into detail about how we need to apply the information that we learn to try and get the muscle to develop and hypertrophy. And then we're going to see what goes wrong with the muscle as well and how the muscle stops responding. So we're going to also look at when a muscle goes wrong, how we can use therapeutic techniques to either prevent injury or correct it if it does go wrong. So we'll look at them further on in the video. Some people come up to me and say, your system might work for you but not for me. And I'll say to them, well, why do you say that? And they say, well, I'm different. So I'll say to them, well, how different is different? Because we're both human beings, we have the same physiology. There might be slight discrepancies or differences in what we call somatotypes. So one person might be more mesomorphic, which means a little bit more tendency to be muscular than another person. One person might have slightly different percentage of muscle fibre types than another person. And then another person might have different levels of hormones like testosterone or growth hormone. But if we put all these factors aside, we've all got the same basic physiological system, albeit slight differences. So we can apply this principle across the board. Some people might improve more than others, but we can generally say that everybody will improve. But it is all down to mindset as well. So you do have to have the right mindset for the task. We've got to have the right muscle, mind-muscle connection, I call it. So when you're focusing on a set, you really do have to focus on it. The type of system that we're employing, you're focusing on one working set and you have to give it your all, and that's the only chance you get. So it does require a lot of concentration and a lot of mind-muscle connection control. So if you look at the first diagram, I'm not going to go into too much depth because we go into more depth in the book, but as you can see there, it's a picture of a muscle broken down. And you see the muscle from the tendon attachment, and it's split right down to its myofilaments. And if you look on the second diagram, those myofilaments then split down even further into two proteins, one called myosin, one called actin. These two proteins form interlink connections which slide across one another. This is called the sliding filament theory, and this is how a muscle contracts. So the myosin actin slide over one another, and the muscle actually contracts and shortens. The first diagram also shows the nerve fibre connecting to many muscle fibres. Now we're talking about the white muscle fibres, the explosive fast twitch fibres, and one nerve connection can connect to as many as 2,000 muscle fibres. Now we need to try and contract all these muscle fibres at once, and there is a situation we talk about in the book called the all or nothing law, where if you can maximally contract all the nerve fibre connections, you will maximally contract the muscle. Now in order to do this, we do a technique called a primer set. So before we do the working set, we do a primer set to maximally activate all these motor units. And we're just going to demonstrate how this works. And it's a particular trick called a levitation trick. So we're going to show you this trick now. So Charlotte weighs 140 plus pounds, and we're going to attempt to lift it with two fingers on each side. Two people, okay, Charlotte. So if you fold your arms, just keep yourself rigid there. I'll count to three. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and now we rest a minute. So we've made a good effort this is the equivalent of the primer set. So he made a good effort, fired all these motor units up. So we just rest about 1 minute now to recover the lactate and everything in the muscles, and then we make another attempt whilst this muscle memory is still strong. Got it. 1, 2, 3. Good result. Alright, did you feel like it?
Yeah. Did it shock yourself? Yeah.
So now we move on to talk about energy systems. Now obviously when we take food energy in, we need the food to be broken down into its constituents to provide energy for the muscle to contract. So as you can see in the diagram, the food energy provides energy for work. Ultimately that work then translates to thermal energy. Okay, so thermal energy is produced. Now any excess energy we don't use is stored as fat. So all this is derived from food energy. Now when we perform a muscle contraction or a muscle activity, we're using basically 4 main energy systems, and I've labelled them there on the diagram: A, B, C and D. Now the first system is called the creatine phosphate system, or the phosphagen system, and that only lasts about 10 seconds when you're using explosive muscle contraction. Then you move on to 2 types of glycolysis, B and C. One doesn't need oxygen and only lasts for about 30 seconds, but it produces lactate in the muscle. Some people call it lactic acid. It's technically incorrect, it's more lactate. Now the lactate can be converted back into energy again, but that's the initial energy response. Once you've used your creatine up, you use the first stage of glycolysis, which is B. Then we move into C. So if you need to, your activity lasts for more than a few minutes into a few hours, then you need oxygen, but the system eventually doesn't produce as much lactate in the muscle. Finally, energy system D, which uses fatty acids. So the fat that you can store or you eat in your food is converted into fatty acids, and it provides energy. It's a slow energy response, so you can't rely on it to produce fast energy, but it lasts for as long as you've got fat storage, so it could last for days, really. It uses oxygen mildly, but it's a low energy system. So for instance, if you're doing a walk for hours on end, you'll be primarily using fatty acids, so using your fats for energy. So we're basically involved in the first 2 A and B systems when we're talking about contraction of muscle in bodybuilding. All these energy systems overlap, and they can be replenished. So for example, the lactate produced in the muscle as a byproduct of this energy system can be reconverted to produce energy back again. The phosphates from the creatine system, system A, can be removed from muscles and can restore the creatine system again. Now those 2 systems need time to recuperate, and they need at least 2 to 3 minutes. So if you rest only for 1 minute in between sets, you're not replenishing these systems. The creatine system's still discharged, if you will, and so is the lactate system. There's too much lactate in the muscle, which prevents the muscle contracting properly. So if you give 2 to 3 minutes in between sets, you allow these systems to recharge, and the muscle's got enough energy to lift heavy weights again. As you can see on this diagram, once you perform intensive resistance exercise, so that's a heavy weight training session, this causes inflammation in the muscle. It activates growth factors that is produced, specifically IGF-1 and MGF, and also a group of chemicals called cytokines. These are all produced in the first 3 days. From 3 to 5 days, we've got what we call a proliferation phase, where you get an increase in satellite cells. Now these are cells that can form into muscle tissue further down the line, so we get an increase in these cells. This causes a remodelling in the muscle. This occurs over 5 to 8 days. And these satellite cells differentiate into new myofibrils in muscle. Some satellite cells have been shown to fuse with muscle fibres, developing new muscle fibres, and this is called hyperplasia. So whereas at one time we used to think that muscle fibres just grew in diameter, we still mainly think that, but there's still a number of studies, especially in animals, which tend to suggest that more muscle fibres have been produced through intensive exercise. But as you can see, the basic premise of this, or the basic take-home message, is that all this system takes at least 8 days to recover from. So even the remodelling occurring from 5 to 8 days. So we try and cram our workouts into a week, and that can be a mistake sometimes. So don't necessarily restrict yourself to 7 days. You might do a 10-day timetable in which you can split your body parts up within that 10 days. And don't be frightened of doing that if that's what you feel you need to recover. Now on the next diagram, there's 3 systems there. Now I've labelled them FG, which is short for fast twitch glycolytic. That's number 1. The second system is FOG, which is short for fast twitch oxidative glycolytic. And number 3 is eccentric oxidative glycolytic. Now it might sound complicated, but basically the FG, the F standing for fast twitch, is the white fibres within your muscle. The glycolytic, meaning that they respond very quickly over a short period of time, no longer than 30 seconds. The second style of training lasts for 60 seconds per set and works the more oxidative fibres, but these fibres still grow. These are called the FOG fibres. Now we can still work the FOG fibres in a different way on technique number 3 by putting a slow contraction into the training schedule. So we'll talk about that. So the first section, the first type of training is FG. So if you notice there, we do one warm-up set with 15 repetitions with a quarter the weight you're going to use for your 8 rep maximum. The second warm-up is 10 repetitions. The third warm-up is 6 repetitions with 50 and 75% respectively of the weight you're going to use. And then the primer set, you only do 1 to 2 repetitions with approximately the weight you're going to use for your working set. And then your 5th set, the working set, you only do 6 to 8 reps. Obviously you go to maximum to failure. So you need to rest long enough in between each set, at least 2 minutes, as we were talking about before, to allow the energy system to replenish and rejuvenate. And then that primer set, make sure you rest 2 to 3 minutes before you do your working set. Time under tension totally is 30 seconds, which is ideal to train these FG fibres. So these FG fibres are the ones that we're aiming to train with this system. Time for 1 repetition is 4 seconds. So if you think 2 seconds down, or 2 to 3 seconds down, pause and then drive up. And that's 4 seconds per repetition. That's the speed that you would perform each set. The second one, the second training method, is FOG. The time under tension is 60 seconds. First warm-up 15 reps, 10 reps for the second warm-up, 6 reps for the third warm-up, and then you do 1 to 2 reps for the primer. Again, 80 to 100% of your 12 rep working set. So this is 12 reps. Each rep takes about 4 to 5 seconds again. So that's 12 times 5, which is 60 seconds time under tension. So each of those repetitions may be 3 seconds down, pause and drive up. So 4 to 5 seconds. But the length of time under tension is